It's fun times for everyone and happy times, stressful times. I was telling Lane about our adventure these last 2 weeks. It was stressful, okay, but we're here. The boys are back. Literally, Musa was just in here, then you have to drop off, but he'll jump back in a second here. But we're here to talk about all things chaotic that have happened here so far. We're swapping everything around. We're going to have a full house here. On the Rise is here. Mo Football will be joining us shortly. And I'm your host, the Africans, wearing my orange shirt day here in Canada. I would spend a little bit of time reading about Terry Felix, who is to date the only Indigenous player to play for Canada at the soccer level. So that's been a fun little thing to look at. I've always wondered, like, I want to do something like grassroots-ish levels, something different every month, even if it's without a I don't need a sponsorship or anything. I want to do something just to be like showcase it. But yeah, I'm looking into indigenous soccer right now, which is very fascinating to look into. But besides that, all the fun things here. Lane, how are you doing? Welcome to it's October basically, right? Welcome
Yeah,
to
we're
fall or pre-winter for you. How are you hanging in there right now these days?
surprisingly warm down here actually, so I can actually enjoy October for once. I mean, for Saskatchewan, that's quite rare that we
Mhm.
have a plus 26-degree October to start October. So can't really complain right now, But we got an October squad to break down. We got games to get into. Maybe it's that Australian side coming to Montreal. It's giving us that warm breeze.
It could be. It very well could be. It does bring up some nice weather, some wonderful things, some wonderful memories. And yeah, I mean, it isn't the title. We have a lot of things to talk about, but let's get to this Canadian men's roster, which just dropped today, which means in all things more chaos and more things to talk about. We have the roster that is here as it is listed. I think we both have videos breaking down our thoughts on the roster. So go to our channels, give us subscribers, views, content, the things. But I mean, Ali Ahmed, Zorhan Basong, Moise Bombito, Tejan Buchanan, Mathieu Choignac, Derek Cornelius, Maxime Crepeau, Jonathan David, Promise David, Luc de Fougerel, Stephanie Stacchio, Ishmael Kone, Kyle Laren, Richie Larea, Liam Miller, Jaden Nelson, Taniel O'Shea. I can't read that small because my eyes are great. Jonathan Osorio, James Pantemis, Nathan Saliba, Jacob Schaffelberg, Nico Segur, Dane St. Clair, and Joel Waterman. That's the roster. I know you have your thoughts on your video, which I encourage you guys to go to our channels, go and watch how we react to them. But what are your first reactions to this, knowing that we have really only two more windows outside of this before the World Cup begins? And what's your thoughts on this roster here?
I think it's the best one we could have called up once again.
Mhm.
Of course, there's a couple question marks around the back line of no Jamie Knight LaBelle, no Jaquil Marshall Ruddy. But in the long run, are they current starters for us in the World Cup? No. Is that a major concern? No. So I think we're seeing the best out of this team. I really like that Jesse's bringing four number nines, four strikers. He's really learned over his tenure with the national team that he doesn't need to pinhole himself into five strikers on this roster, and he can utilize that slot elsewhere, which has been very nice to see that he's realized that with how high this midfield press is, the intensity of this team, to call up more midfielders, to call up more wingers in case of injury, in case of fitness. And I think he's done a
Mhm.
great job with that. And I really like the build and the outfit around this roster because it really designs around how he plays, how he likes to set up this team with more depth in the midfield, a strong back line. I think we'll get to learn a lot about this team this window between on who starts next to Bombito, because I don't think we'll see Bombito start both games. That's a lot to ask from a recovering center back from a major injury to
Mhm.
throw him into a high intensity style of play. But there's a lot of questions that I think will get answered this window and hopefully get answered this window, especially if no Alfonso Davies and Alistair Johnston hopefully coming back next window. So ideally, it's the best team available, and we finally get to see James Pantemis in this squad. But he should start. I really think he should get minutes, but I know that won't happen. But what are your thoughts currently on this team?
I mean, I don't know if it's everyone has players that they wish would make the roster, so I'm never gonna call something the best roster.
I saw this coming.
Yeah, I'll never call anything the best roster because there's always someone else you will always look and say, "Hey, could they have been better?" I think for how Marsh wants to play, I think this is his roster. I will give you that much, right? And I think if you look at the types of players he's called up, and what they're looking for, I think that's there. I mean, I had a conversation with Andre Schaffner on Twitter today. It was just like, well, and I think this kind of comes to a point which we want to have a conversation about with this roster, which is form versus familiarity. But yeah, I think for what it is, I mean, Ali Ahmed, Jaden Nelson, Jacob Schaffelberg, all kind of trying to battle it out on the left side to figure out who is going to be that left starting outside midfielder slash winger. Then you add in the Liam Miller. I think it's a very fascinating conversation. There's battles across the board. I think with players coming back from injuries, they're not all going to focus and they're not all going to prominently feature, like you said. But I still think there's opportunities stylistically to take a look at things. And I think that's what I would be really curious to see. I don't think, again, to me, I think Marsh has had his 23 since Copa America. And so to me, that's not really a surprise. I think there's conversation in terms of players when you look at their form versus, and I talked about that in my video, form versus familiarity. If you go based off form, like you're taking a player like Jaden Nelson above someone like a Jacob Schaffelberg. But if you're taking familiarity, Schaffelberg, you are pushing a little bit higher up versus a player like Jaden Nelson. So I think the opportunities are given. They have to make the most of them. We saw Jaden Nelson almost score a goal, but he ran out of runway against Romania the last window. And if he scores that goal, maybe that gives him a little bit more of a, for lack of better words, a little bit more of a preview, a little bit more of a showcase, a trial with Marsh. But I'm really curious to see how they approach these two games because I think all things being equal and everyone being healthy, for instance, I think Marsh's preferred starting 9 duos are Jonathan David and Daniel O'Shea. I think that's his preferred set. Is it the one that some fans would want? No, but I think that's what he wants to do. I would be curious, based off of the matchup, if we do see a promise, David, specifically against Australia, mainly because I think stylistically that might fit a little bit more, a little bit better. Whereas, say, against Colombia, where maybe you give up more of the possession, maybe that's a game where you play Tanny because then you want to play the ball and him into space, let him try to create on the counter, and then try to use that speed to your advantage and use that pressing to make Colombia uncomfortable in their build-up. But against Australia, you could argue the same thing, but I feel they might have more of the possession against Australia, which means, okay, if we're going to try to either work the ball around or try to send in crosses, nothing would hurt versus a 6'4" striker who can get out of the edge of crosses as well as just be a prominent feature there. So to me, I think how Marsh treats these two matchups is very much curious for me. Who for you do you look at with this roster are being a very important, like who has a lot to gain or a lot to lose in this window for you?
I think Ali Ahmed's probably a stat out here. Like you said, that left kind of attacking midfield, left midfield role is the one of the bigger questions within this lineup, as well as the spine of this team. But Ali Ahmed had a incredible window against Romania, against Wales, really proved himself as almost a lock in this team at the left hand flank. But we know how much Jacob Schaffelberg is loved and adored by Jesse Marsh. And we also know how well Liam Miller played under Jesse Marsh to start his kind of tenure with the national team and playing with Alphonso Davies. So for Ali Ahmed, albeit he played incredible last window, he still has two wingers behind him in the pecking order that could easily jump him if he has a poor run in form, if he drops a level in training, if he doesn't live up to what Jesse Marsh wants tactically in these two matches. It is really a role that I could see change or a starting position that I don't think is a lock for probably till the World Cup. Like I think that is a spot that till that March window we see is really open for grabs. And I like what Ali Ahmed brings, but I'm a huge Liam Miller supporter, and
Mhm.
I would love to see him starting in this Canadian team. I think he's very underrated, undervalued. I think he has a lot to prove in this window. Of course, he's still coming back from an injury, so he's not going to be that same Liam Miller. I think it's going to be a lot to see from him in November. But that left hand flank, I think there's a lot to gain and lose in this window in terms of all three players. You've already pointed out Jacob Schaffelberg. For me, he is the ideal super sub in this team. We go back to the last World Cup where this Canadian team had a good starting 11, but when they looked to the bench, it was chaos, for lack of better words. There was a lack of quality and depth. And now you look at this Canadian side and really could bring on any winger, and you don't know who's going to have a terrific performance. I didn't even bring up Jaden Nelson. So we technically have
Mhm.
four left wingers on this squad, and some people can even toss in Alfonso Davies if they really wanted to bring that
Don't.
conversation back up.
Yeah,
And let's
that's good.
not
And
do that here.
let's not do that. Let's
Yeah,
not.
I agree. Let's take a U-turn away from that one. But if we're not counting him, we have four left wingers on this squad. I think the
Mhm.
right-hand side is a complete lock already. Tajon Buchanan is that good. He's performing that well for Villarreal. And for me, he's just in this squad without a doubt. But that left-hand flank, when you have four guys in this squad who could legitimately start at next year's World Cup, is a huge make or break window for Ali Ahmed, who just had a fantastic window back in September.
No, that's definitely, I think a lot of it, you can look at it, does come down to what your coach wants to do with that, right? And I'm gonna throw this to you, Mo. Jumping in. By the way, you look lovely in your hat there. Just the smile, just breathing. It's good to be back, boys. Boys, it's just great to be back. Let's just be honest there. But question for you: like you've watched Mo, you've watched France go to multiple World Cups. You've watched Senegal have success at World Cups. You're gonna be in the U.S. Watch the U.S. go to World Cup. You have Canada there supporting Mexico. When you look at teams in this conversation between form versus familiarity, what to you is more important, right? Do you think that whoever's playing the best at the moment should go in, or does the time they spend with the coach, is that important, more important, does that supersede it when you're trying to build that roster for tournament football in that sense? Ooh. Mo, I think your mic is muted. I cued that in so beautifully too. Unbelievable. Can't hear you still.
Uh-oh. Technical issues here.
We're having technical issues. Unbelievable. All right, let me just, yeah, we're gonna leave you fix that. I did see, this is what happens when I come in. This is like my omen for actually being prepared. It's like, see, you become prepared, something goes wrong. Don't be ever be prepared. Chaos will
Always.
ensue and things will work out better that way. All right. Okay, now you're muted. Uh, Nothing still. For shame. For shame. But what we'll do is, yeah, I'll throw you off for a second. You come in, and we'll go back and we'll figure that out as we go. For shame, guys. But like, I do wonder what is more valuable because even when you look at, say, the Canadian roster in terms of familiarity, right? A familiarity, we didn't have a chance to have this conversation, but like a player like Jonathan Osorio is someone who's very familiar with Marsh and how he wants to play. But for me, Junior Hoylett, I think, fits much better with how Marsh wants to play because Hoylett gives you not only that flexibility as a player, but he's still class on the ball. Like we had that interaction, still class, always within his passing, I think. And he's the closest mimic to Jonathan David playing as that 10 in that creative role, in that creative space. And so I do wonder kind of where that goes. You mentioned Ali Ahmed there. I would love to see a goalkeeping battle, but I think you're too late in the game to really do that. You only have four more games left to really see who's there. And I think it's going to go down between Dane and Max, even though arguably you could argue James Pantemis should have had a shout, right? How
So,
you look at the goalies right here?
um, I think, like you said, I think it's hard to make a goalkeeping battle with all three of them now, with
Mhm,
4 games and then whatever we get in March. I think it's a really difficult time for James Pantemis to come in and battle for it. And I'm not surprised Jesse Marsh came out saying that it's hard to call up both of Portland Timbers number one and number two
mhm,
when they're playing at the same time as Canada in international windows. I get that. But at the same time, if you're looking at that from that perspective, James Pantemis probably should have been the one getting called up for however many windows now. He had won that role. He's played very well for Portland Timbers this year, being their number one. Yes, there's been mistakes along the way, but he has had a very good season with Portland Timbers and arguably has been Canada's best goalkeeper available to them right now. Dane's been terrific in the MLS with one of the best sides in the league, but he's had his fair share of mistakes, as has Maxime Crepeau. And it really should be a 1A, B, C battle right now, but it
mhm,
just can't. There's not enough games for that to be a thing. As much as I love James Pantemis to start against Australia or against Colombia, I would be astonished or amazed if that did happen. I'm a huge James Pantemis fan. I've always have been. He comes up with big moments and also is incredible from the penalty spot. Saved
mhm.
50% of his shots that he's faced this year in the MLS, and that has been, of course, a huge point of contention around this Canadian men's national team is penalties. And if James Pantemis come in and do that, it would be very exciting to see. But right now, if I had to lean between Dane and Max, I do think this is still that 1A, 1B. And
Mhm.
I do expect one of them to get each get a game this window. And I'd be surprised if they both got games. Like if both one of them started both games this window, it'd be a true sign on who Jesse Marsh wants to start. But for me, I still think Maxime Crepeau should be Canada's number one between him and Dane.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it. Mo, you coming in here?
I believe so, right?
There we go.
Oh, the relief. Let
You
me
have
tell you,
you
it's
have
too much
thousands of
stress.
dollars of equipment, and this
And
still happens.
and one cable throws it all off. But no,
Yes.
like, but back to questions. Like when we've been talking about Canada's roster for this window, and again, we
Mhm.
have the question for you: familiarity versus form. Like when you look at teams you've supported, the France's and Senegal's, what do you think matters more when you go into tournament football like this? Is it more so that form that you have going into it, or how familiar the player is with the system and all those things?
I think it's more so how familiar you are with the system, the coach, and how much time you've had to play with your actual teammates.
Hmm.
Because I think that's where the form can almost be canceled out by the opponent having being in form as well. So if you
Hmm.
kind of disorganize, your form goes out the window. I've been fortunate to have to support teams that have played together for a very long time,
Hmm.
so you kind of see the more fluidity of their game versus the teams that still have to determine who's going to play and who might just be hot at the end of the summer. We all know if every players have their window of when they're sometimes they're hotter when they start the season versus the end. The other ones might slowly
Hmm.
get into the groove. So I think for me it's more get familiar to it, especially for the World Cup where you don't really have the time to say, hey, we're getting to know each other. Because before
No,
you know it,
yeah.
you have 3 games gone.
That's true. No, that is true. Here's a question for you. Just thinking about the seasons, right?
Right.
The World Cup will start at the end of the European season and about midway through MLS. Do you think for you, just looking at it is, and this I guess for both of you, do you think that should affect how you're looking at building these rosters, especially thinking, okay, we have one set of players who will be coming to the end of a long season, a long campaign, a marathon, and others who will be mid stride, mid form. Now, again, quality is still quality.
Right.
Let's not try to distance that. I'm not suggesting by any means that, the guy who's playing at insert MLS club will be better because they're mid-form versus someone who's playing at a top 5 league or Real Madrid. Now we're just throwing up arbitrary clubs. But where this tournament is, and the fact that it is right in the middle of the summer, does have a factor in terms of how you're playing. When you guys both look at this, do you think that is something you might think the coaches will take into consideration when they're building out their rosters, or you think it's just going to be, again, same thing as form versus familiarity and the likes? Anybody can jump in on this, so feel free to.
Anything? I can take it.
You go first, Mo.
I think for me, it's probably where the more experienced team will know how to manage those players, and also the relationship that they've built with the national team and the clubs. Because I think that's where the biggest thing comes to play, is that, some club needs their top players to play in order for them to progress during the season or win it or not be relegated. But then there's that big relationship with the coaches that know, hey, everything is data now these days. So it's like, hey, this player has played X amount of game. Now he may have to skip the first game of the World Cup so he can kind of get himself prepared. So I think for me, they have to kind of be logistic players, I guess, and experts on how to manage workload. Because even though MLS players might be in mid-season shape, but that doesn't mean that their body is managed as, the top 5 teams in Europe or something. Because you can tell that by just the physical of who takes care of themselves better than others. I think for me, I think it's more so of how they manage themselves, and if they have the depth to manage to not have their top player start from day one.
No, that's true. That's that fair point as well. Lane, what about you? What do you think?
I think in terms of Canada, I think we know with Jesse Marsh, form only means so much, as we talked about for so long. Like, I don't think it's going to be make or break in terms of the MLS season, whether Kamal Miller makes it over Joel Waterman or Jamie Knight-LaBelle. Like, I don't think that's going to be the be-all and end-all of it, right? I think it could determine on Joel Waterman and Kamal Miller who gets the call-up depending on form. But I don't think it's going to jump them over a Luke DeFougerol or someone like that, because he has already shown how much familiarity means more than form. I think it could mean a lot for Jonathan Osorio compared to Junior Hoylett, perhaps, because Osorio is going to be in form. He's going to be playing consistently, and he's already been more involved in Jesse Marsh call-ups and lineups and that familiarity within the squad. So I think it just is in terms of Canada compared to other teams, is more of a player-by-player basis. And in terms of that depth chart, I don't think it's going to jump anyone crazy within the European clubs per se for Canada, but those later depth charts and ranks for Miller, Waterman, Knight-LaBelle, I think that could really swing it, but it could be very interesting to see in terms of those players.
No, and that's a fair point to bring up too, because I think for Canada, US, and Mexico, they're in an advantageous spot where they just have friendlies lead up. So they've been able to look at a few more players. And I think I've knocked on all the wood, guys, no worries. I think Canada can, you don't want injuries, but you always wonder, have you seen enough so that if you had to bring someone else in, they're ready to jump in, right? And I think Marsha's done just enough to do that, right? Like, he's seen Bear, he's seen Jefferson up front, he's seeing Jaquil Marshall-Rudy, he's seeing some other midfielders as well. And goalkeepers, I mean, every third goalkeeper, I mean, I can get my gloves right now, and if I could grow 6 inches, I'm there, baby. I'm there. But he's seeing a lot of players, not as much as I think I would like, but I think they're doing the best that they could, right? And there's enough supplementary things happening. I think the one thing that works for Canada, but doesn't necessarily work for everyone, is they have those windows to work with. Like, if you look at Africa right now, after this window, they have one window for friendlies, and then those who are going to AFCON are in AFCON mode, and then those who aren't in AFCON mode are in, okay, we're in recruitment / getting ready for the next year. So everyone has a different thing. And then while that's happening, like Sansan says, you got tournaments, right? You got the U20s going on for the men. You have the U17s going for the men and women happening. You got futsal happening. There's a lot of different fascinating tournaments that are happening. Yes, Canada's not there, but the team who did beat us are doing quite well. Shout out to Panama. Shout out to Panama. Aside that is on a very side note. That is a team I'm watching curiously because I'm treating Panama this year, and hopefully they can, steady the ship for World Cup qualifiers. If they can get that figured out and they have a nice generation in this U20s, like I don't know if they're going to be as prolific, but like Musa, you remember that U20 team from Ghana back in 09 who wins it all, and then the FA says, "Let me take like 5 of those players, throw them on the main team." And then it's like, okay, you got the young core, you got the old core, and then you got what's it called? Luis Suarez saying hello and becoming a villain to West Africans everywhere. So you have those options to kind of build up and go from there. But it'll be interesting to see kind of how everyone kind of looks at that, how they treat it, how they're going through. We do mention Africa, and I do want to jump over for that in terms of World Cup qualifying, just because we always have the chaos. We always have the drama. We always have the fun things that are happening, including a points deduction and giving teams life. Because what, Lane, I won't lie when I say this. Watching everyone else in World Cup qualifying, I miss it. I miss the stress. I miss the stress of like, okay, I need a 4-point window in October. Like, can I get a 4-point window in October? Like, I rewatched one of my first videos where I was like, okay, guys, a 5-point window when we play Honduras, the U.S., and then El Salvador. That would be ideal. And then next thing I know, I'm like, oh, we got a 9-point window. Oh, I miss that stress of it. I truly do. But have you guys been able to catch any of the World Cup qualifying outside of watching friendlies and things of that? And anything stood out to you in terms of what you guys have seen so far?
Not necessarily.
It's really Senegal. You didn't watch that. I saw your.
Of course, but that was a little stressful because yes, we were behind 1-0, and it had to take probably 80 minutes until it equalized. So that was the scary part of all. But I was not as concerned. And France just pretty much was just walked, dog walked their game. So that was not too stressful. But I think for me, the question for you is you don't have any qualifiers. So it's all friendlies.
Yeah.
Do you really enjoy that?
I don't know if I enjoy it as much as I like just to watch teams and players play.
Right.
And so in that sense, I like to see teams play and learn things, especially with a friendly. When it's a friendly, you just spend a lot of your time just saying, okay, what am I going to learn? Right. And so when you're watching friends, it's like, okay, what have I learned? I've learned that this player is at this level. I've learned this player is not at this level. Right. I do think in the international game, we have missed the friendly. And so
that was a pause.
Apparently the bat signal went up and everyone's just like, what is that? It's time to join. No, but like I think with friendlies, it's something I think the world game has missed, just to be able to have low stakes but high opportunity type games, especially in a world we live in where there's dual nationals you're trying to bring in to sell a program to. A friendly would go a long way to say, hey, come in, see how things are, and then make your decision from there. Versus like if you're switching, like someone from Senegal just had someone switch over to them recently, right? And it's like, good for them. I'm happy for them. But it's like, it would have been nice if that could have been, okay, so Senegal is playing Jordan in a friendly. I'm just picking Jordan because why not? And then we got to see 5 of these dual nationals and maybe 2 or 3 decide, yeah, Senegal's where we want to be. You don't have that. And I think that's the one thing that we miss with not being and not having the friendlies. But ultimately, I think it works out overall. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Not a problem. But like, I think that's the one thing I do miss. Just the high stakes of it. I I don't want the stress. Don't get me wrong. Just put me in every. I think there should be. And this is a really, and not just because we are here. I think logically it makes more sense that if you are hosting the World Cup, you should get an automatic bid for the World Cup. Because because I think that makes sense, right? How else are you gonna build that momentum and that energy for it's like, hey guys, they're already here. Like Qatar was just like, oh, they're hosting, cool. But if Qatar is in 2018 in the Russia World Cup, you're thinking, okay, they're there. Let's see what they're all about. Okay, they did something. We kind of know what they are. They have a few years to build that lets you build the hype. I think that would have been more beneficial. Now it helps Canada that they qualified, but I think it'd be really good for it to work out that way. But let's jump in. Lane, have you caught any World Cup qualifying throughout the times without the stress of it? Have you missed having to go, to San Pedro Sula and need to get 3 points? Have you missed that stress?
Not as much as you. I mean, that'd be a high bar, but I do miss it a little bit, right? Like it's fun to have that competitive nature,
Mm-hmm.
but the friendlies are more enjoyable in some sense. There's less stress. You get to see different setups, different formations, less do or die. And we also get to see us play against Colombia, Wales,
Mm-hmm.
Romania. How often have we played these kinds of nations? It's great to see some different teams that we play against, but I
Mm-hmm.
do miss the stress once in a while, right? You want that competitive edge once in a while.
You do want it, and again, I don't think we'll ever have a year like we had with the Ocho, where it was just, what's that? 3 games a window. You show up on Monday, you play the Tuesday, then you play the Friday, and then you play the next Wednesday. You're like, yeah, thanks, guys, and you're like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised no one tore like more muscles in that. Canada's big injury during that was myocarditis. So I'm like, hey, if that's all we have to deal with, hmm. But we, but like I mentioned South Africa. I mentioned Africa, like South Africa. Comments are talking about that, but let's get to the big news in World Cup qualifying. Other than who was it who just got suspended by FIFA? Again, don't mess with FIFA's money or their integrity. Everything else are like, yeah, we'll let you do it. Bribery, perhaps, allegedly. I have to say allegedly. I
Mm.
think allegedly is the right word to save myself from everything. Perfect,
Sounds like
perfect,
it was
perfect.
just not enough.
Yeah, I like to cover myself legally. All right, let's go. Okay, right. So let's go through some of these comments. Okay, Sansan, Canada calls itself a big team, but youth teams failing on the rise would agree. Uh,
Mm. Oh,
we're
oh,
just coming out fighting today.
yeah.
Okay. Um,
Sore throat.
listen,
I'm just gonna listen to that one.
my only comment on that is I've said since 22, Canada is uncomfortably in the third best seats in CONCACAF, and they have to prove they belong there. I think in CONCACAF, they have a mixed bag of results. I will always say this. I think you'll always surprise your guests, but your neighbors know when garbage day is. And so I think when they're in CONCACAF, everyone knows how they want to play, and they're like, no, we're just not gonna let you do that. Where we go when Canada goes other places, I think they'll always surprise by how fast they're playing the different aspects. But in CONCACAF, they know what they are. And so it's always gonna be more of a struggle in terms of that. And I think that's where they'll have to show their most growth, having to win more of those ugly games and just play through it and just not dock yourself by getting 2 yellows in 7 minutes and then changing the course of a game. Jacob, we still love you, but I still remember. We still remember. All right, we still remember. Okay, watch Prince Hood. Good to see you. Just watched the On the Rise. Did you see the New Zealand? Yes, I did see that game actually. I had the two dual screens going on with that because I'm just watching U20 because I'm a sicko. Because again, I think it's a fascinating it's the most fascinating age group because you could easily see whoever wins that are players from that just jumping right to their national teams, whether it's the World Cup or whether it's continental competition. So I do You do that. Steph, nice to see you as well. Alrighty. Unlike all European teams, Canada doesn't always get this opportunity. This is also true. And this is where I would say my radical idea is every 2 years, one of those everyone's don't do. We should just have a month window, whether it's like the September window or like the October window. Though next year, I think they're getting rid of them. They're just combining both so that they don't have to go, which will be interesting. But let's just call it the March window. The March window should just be friendly palooza. Go play someone that you've never played before. Give me Canada versus Mozambique. I mean, that won't happen, but like, give me Canada versus Mozambique.
Could we pay for
Give me
flights?
Morocco. Yeah, we might as well. Morocco goes to play Mexico.
That'd be fire.
That would be so fun, right?
Yes.
You bring South Korea to Brazil. You take Argentina wherever they want to go. Or take Argentina to Nigeria just for chaos purposes.
Oh, that country will be locked down on that one.
Yes. And so that's what I want to see. Like, give us every other March, nothing. No Nations League, no nothing. Play that through. Even with South America, the point stock, Nigeria still ain't going through. We're gonna talk about that here. Because that's a Nigeria's problem hasn't been that they can't score. That's their issue. They have not been able to score. Since 2010, no, South Africa has not made it back to the World Cup, Steph. They've been close a couple times, but they haven't. Okay, Would read comments, man. Just enjoy no World Cup qualifying. How often do you see Canada in Europe? That's what the Canadian Shield was for. No, that's true. It's fair, but I mean, give me more mini tournaments like that. The amount of those women, we had this. We saw the Unity Cup where you had Ghana, Nigeria, Trinidad, and Jamaica. Like, that's something. Even if they did that in Marches, do something like that where you can actually take advantage of a diaspora, a French version of the Unity Cup where they're like, hey, Morocco, Haiti,
that'll be a lot of countries.
Any honestly, those are just called like, hey, we colonize people.
Yeah,
we're sorry. Come play here. This is what it would ultimately become. Guatemala. I've done Guatemala.
Yeah. I'm still amazed that those games are not happening because you're playing World Cups. You know it's coming. You're most likely going to see another continent play against you. Why not kind of prepare yourself to someone that's close enough or similar to, so you can prepare yourself to maybe see what's coming? Because you got to have an African, you got to have Asian, you got to have European, Americas, just to make sure that you know how physical, how fast. I'm still amazed on why they get stuck to a handful of opponents.
Well, they don't have enough windows. If you look at most World Cup, like, for example, look at Africa, right?
Yeah,
Africa finishes World Cup qualifying this month in October. And then November, you have the Intercontinental playoffs. But then once you go to December, you're right into AFCON. And then you just have March, right? If you go to, what's it called? If you look at CONCACAF finishes in November, and then they just have March, right? So the opportunities are limited. And then once you get to the friendly window right before the World Cup, it's basically like,
don't injure me.
Don't injure me, but you're proofreading with everyone who's in your program. You're not testing yourself really, right? It'll be whoever's there. So it'll probably be like, Canada will be like, yeah, Uzbekistan, y'all want to play in Montreal? Because why not? Unless they're in the group. But like that's where it kind of breaks down to. So I think if they had more, if there was a way, and I think Nation League affects this a bit, but if there was a way where you could limit Nations Leagues and you can say, okay, the November window, by November, we're done World Cup qualifying. So teams have 4 windows or 4 games to really test it around. Because, I mean, there's some crazy talk out there about whether it's France wants to come over and do, because I've read that report where it was like France wants to come over and simulate the World Cup in March. So they want to do a window in North America. And to that I say, Montreal. You could have had it all. You could have had it all.
It's your cousin.
But then they don't have that. And so I think giving them more opportunities, but I think they're condensing them more and all the fun things. But that's, again, it's always a conversation for another time. It's never the right time, but then it ultimately becomes it. But we need to talk about this points deduction, and does it really change anything for Group C and CAF World Cup qualifying? So for everyone who's been under a rock, it's a lovely place to be. South Africa have been docked 3 points for playing a player who had too many yellows, who accumulated too many yellows in the game over Lesotho. And so FIFA finally docked them. And there was a lot of going back and forth with it. To me, it was a matter of when versus if, because in another CAF group, Equatorial Guinea, the group that I'm going to scroll here, guys. Love life. So in this group, where Tunisia beat Equatorial Guinea at the end and made it through, Equatorial Guinea had a player who was deemed ineligible, and then he was then reinstated. But FIFA/CAF didn't give them the wins that they had. If not for them, Tunisia isn't in the World Cup yet. So because they already did that, this was never a surprise for me that this was going to happen. So beforehand, South Africa was at 17 points, but because they lost the win, they're at 14, which means because of goal difference, Benin is leading the group. Nigeria is still alive. Rwanda is still alive. A really long shot. Lesotho is alive, and Zimbabwe, I mean, you're happy to be here. It is wild to me that after all that Nigeria has done, and yes, apparently, this is the part of the program where I have to say something negative against Nigeria, apparently, but it is baffling to me that after all how they've bundled this and bumbled this, that they are still just one swing away. And to be honest, I'll give my opinion right off the bat. You guys can tell me how you feel. I still don't think they make it. Not because I don't like them. Okay, this has to be, let the record show. Nigeria have not been scoring. And that to me, and it baffles me that a team that's talented are unable to score. Cool. That's been their issue, right? They've been unable to score. They have 9 goals for, 7 goals against. So under more pressure, they've not done better, right? They needed to get more wins in past windows. They weren't able to do it. They have a lifeline here. I still think South Africa makes it through, even though South Africa has the harder route. As I believe South Africa plays Rwanda and then Benin, while Nigeria plays Lesotho and Benin, I believe, is the games. I'll pull it up here. But Mo, you're watching this because you're getting ready for AFCON. Do you think Nigeria can pull this off and make it to the World Cup? Or is it, I mean, it got late early. The sun peaked over a few clouds, but sunset's already here. You think it's over for them? Guys, this is a Senegalese man speaking, so
I don't think it's over for them just yet.
Okay.
I African Juju is working on something. I think for me, I'm still skeptical on the whole, too many yellows, because I think it's almost an embarrassment for not only South Africa, but the CAF and FIFA, because how many clearance do you have to go through to not know you have too many yellows to play?
I think it's a reasonable mistake, but it's also at that level, it's inexcusable. You can tell me that you can make that mistake, but it's inexcusable at that level because everyone is checking their P's and Q's. The risk of losing 3 points, you don't do that. I can understand it's happening, but yeah.
Yeah, so that's the part where there's too many checks and balances for you to not know you have that. The other one, the eligible player, I can understand maybe, paperwork's, but I think that's pretty much the lifeline of Nigeria on there. Because they're experienced enough, even though they're not scoring many goals, they're experienced enough to see that they're only 3 points away.
Mhm.
Ivory Coast have shown us during the last cap tournament that you could be at the very bottom, and it just takes a small spark to bring you up to back from the dead.
Why would you
So
bring that up?
so for me, this is like pure African soccer that you see on paper now, right? Something weird happens, and of course, I'm sure there's not many World Cup that we do not want to see Nigeria playing.
I would love to see them there. Also, way to bring up how a swipe of magic for Cote d'Ivoire to make it 3. You know what that swipe of magic was? You know what that swipe of magic was Ghana giving up a 2-goal lead in additional time and
My
drawing that. Hey,
apologies.
no, I appreciate you. I appreciate you, Mo. You
Yeah,
know, thank
that's why I didn't say the team. I just said
a
Ivory
swipe.
Coast.
You said a swipe. I heard you. I heard
So,
you loud and clear.
so I think it's just African soccer where it's pure drama, where you think it's a set and done, black and white. You win, you lose, you move, or you don't make it.
Mhm.
There's the perfect example where Nigeria is not supposed to be where they are, and all of a sudden they're
Mhm.
thrown a lifeline.
Very true. Lane, I don't know how much of this you've watched or kind of kept an eye on this, but when you're looking at a team that basically felt like they were left for dead, but then are given a lifeline, you think there's enough energy to rejuvenate them and keep them going? Or do you think, based off their form, you kind of have to look at how they're playing versus what the opportunities that's presented to them there?
I think for me, keeping up with the situation, Nigeria has to almost at least get 4 points here, right? Because I don't think South Africa is gonna fall off. I think this is more so gonna galvanize South Africa, and I think they're gonna top this group probably quite easily, in my
Mhm.
opinion. And this will not be a setback. Anything, this might just build up this nation anything more and help them get back in that first World Cup since 2010. And then when you look at Nigeria and that best second place team, they almost have to get almost maximum points, at least 4, because that second best place team right now, if I recall correctly, are 15 points as we stand. If I look this morning, 15, 16 points. So
Yeah.
Nigeria has a lot to do. They almost have to win both these games, and that requires them to beat Benin, which I don't expect them to do on the last day. And it's not going to be an easy game against Lesotho, who need to win themselves to keep themselves alive. And they'll surely, well, nothing against Zimbabwe, but they should beat Zimbabwe in the last day. So 6 points for Lesotho, and they could still have a possibility. So it is a very difficult window for Nigeria. I'm not going to say they lose both of them. I think they win and draw as they usually do. But I really don't think they make it in. I'm not saying their hope is completely dead here, but I can easily see this group probably going South Africa, Benin, Nigeria. And as much of a lifeline as it is, I think this may in the long run help out South Africa more than helps out Nigeria with this setback.
No, that's true. And we threw up the schedule on the screen here. Nigeria plays Lesotho and South Africa plays Zimbabwe same day, October 10th, same time, which I mean works well. And then their final game, it's South Africa versus Rwanda, who have shown Rwanda have been are my new don't sleep on team for the future. It used to be Cape Verde, and we're no longer sleeping on them. They're there, and Nigeria been in as well. So, like you said, I think it does come down to South Africa knows they just need to stay ahead, but they just need Benin to fall. And with Nigeria almost works for South Africa here, whereas because Nigeria needs to get the result. So even if Nigeria goes 6 points up, South Africa versus Zimbabwe, I think, though that's a bit of a regional derby, I think South Africa takes that. And then versus Rwanda, a 4 point window for them versus a 6 point window for someone else, I think gives them just enough to get through, and then they're fine. And you did mention the second place slots and where they currently sit. That group, there's no second place, barring a collapse from other teams. There is no second place slot available for them. The only worst slot would be Tanzania, just because with teams dropping out, they've missed out on points that they would get. But South Africa currently sit as the second worst second place team, though it's only 14 points. But because there's so many teams at 15, so many teams at 16, and then Gabon, they need to. It's the top of the group or stop dreaming basically for them, and I think that's how you have to look at it. So I think for them, like you said, run the table, get to the top of your group. That will get it done for you. But if not, you're hoping for other teams to. There's only so many lifelines. I don't see teams self-imploding. Everyone is not going to self-implode for Nigeria. No one else really. Listen, okay?
Right.
There's not enough Naira for that to work. There's not enough Naira for that to work.
Oh, you sure about that?
I mean, inflation is a tricky thing, my friend. It's a tricky thing.
Hey, they just added a flight from Nigeria to Colombia. So
listen, like
those transfers are starting already. Hey.
Look, these are CAF referees. We're good. We're good. These are CAF referees. Oh goodness, goodness. So CAF will be interesting. That a lot of World Cup qualifiers happening here. The CONCACAF ones are happening as well. Have you watched any of that, Dan, Mr. Dayton, sir?
Which ones?
CONCACAF World Cup qualifying.
A little bit. Trying to watch as much as I can.
No, that's fair. I've watched a bit as well.
Have not been in favor for some of us.
Oh no, that's true. That's true. Well, you're back on the things. Are you guys going to talk about the Colombia home game versus Canada, Guatemala flashbacks? I don't know if they're flashbacks per se, but I think the one thing I did like about the Guatemala matchup is it provides them a reality that when they're not playing at home and you have to perform in that type of an environment, you have to take care of business. The one thing that Guatemala game, yes, the red card is a talking point. Yes, bringing in Jebison as a winger is a talking point. Yes, Dane St. Clair guessing right but doing the wrong thing on penalties is a talking point. The biggest thing for me in that game, we talked about it, Lane, they were not clinical with their chances. If they finish one more chance, it's 2-0. That game should have been 2-3-0 at the end of the first half. Or if you count all the opportunities, it should have been 2-3-1. And you're not going to get all those opportunities. And that's where I'm concerned with Canada. If you want to look at like one thing from their last window, which is a little bit of concern, they generated a lot of chances. And they only were able to convert one. And I think that's my one concern. You're not going to, the better your competition comes, the less great chances you're going to get, which means you only have so many chances to be that clinical, right? You're not going to have, right? Not everyone gets to play, with all due respect to them, a Prince Tome in Africa, right? You don't get to play that team. Not everyone gets to play with all due respect to them. You know what? I'm not gonna throw shade at CONCACAF countries. They're all here. They're all on the internet. They'll all find me. But like, you don't get to play like the bottom ranked teams all the time, which means you're not gonna get 20 chances and you'll happen to win the game 7-0. The better the competition is, those chances have to be clinical. And that was my one thing. Outside of losing, Canada didn't do well. Yes, the loss hurts. Let's be real. But you look at that first half. Before the game turned, they should have been the game. If you look at the quality chat, it should have been 3-1. And they couldn't do that. And if you're just nursing a 1-goal lead, yes, we can talk about how they managed the game. That was my one concern. And so Canada playing a Colombia is a different animal. It's not, Colombia isn't Guatemala. Guatemala is Colombia on a very bad day. I mean, if you think it is, we can bring up the Saudi Arabia game where you should have scored multiple times. But like, that's the thing. If you don't convert, you only have so many options. It's tournament football. You have 3 games. And because you have the third place spot, you can move forward. But you can't leave goals on the pitch, right? When you look at the potential with this Colombia matchup, Lane, like what are your concerns with them? I know they're playing Australia first, which I think they'll be more cagey in that game, so they'll have more possession. But against a Colombia, they're going to get maybe 2, 3 chances. Can you convert one? If you're really good too, like
I think
go.
tactically there's a lot to learn, right?
Mm,
With this game, how we set up against a major nation. As exciting it was to win away in Wales and Romania, when have we played a nation as good as Colombia? Because I can't recall anyone since the Copa America, and the teams we played back then, we fell to. Uruguay fell to them, albeit it was massively rotated roster. And
mhm,
early on in Jesse Marsh's tenure, Argentina, we can't really bring that into discussion. They're just a whole different realm from where we are. But
mhm,
Colombia is up there, right? They're up there with Uruguay. They're with the biggest nations in CONMEBOL. And it's a major test. And we haven't faced a nation like this since maybe a Japan when we were going and preparing for the World Cup. And how did that go? I mean, this is a completely different Canadian side compared to that one. So
mhm,
it's chalk and cheese. But there's a lot to be learned from this heading into a major match, how they cope with the pressure. It's going to be an away day, basically. I know Colombia is technically hosting this, but it's going to be a yellow crowd, which Canada is going to have to get used to for the World Cup. They're going to have to get used to that on a regular basis against sides like Colombia. And the quality that Colombia has all over the pitch is something we haven't seen in a long time. Top players all over the field. They're going to test Canada on a level we haven't seen before, both intensity wise and on a level that Richie Larea tests other players and teams. They're going to do the same to us 11v11, just like Cote d'Ivoire did to Canada at BMO. It's going to
mhm.
be another one of those kinds of games. And I think it's going to be a very high intensity game, but also probably a more technical game than that Cote d'Ivoire game was. I don't think we're going to be kicking and booting each other all over the pitch again, but it'll be a very fun game to watch and a very technical and exciting game. And it's going to be hard to break down that Colombian back line. So I do think we will see a Tawny and Jonathan David front line. Like we have talked about, Tawny is the guy to break down a solid back line and one with a high transitional side. And I think that'll be very exciting to see how he can prove himself against one of the best nations in the world. Because we got to remember, Colombia went on that crazy, what was it, 26 game unbeaten run for some time there. And yes, they haven't been the same since, but they're still an incredible nation nonetheless.
No, that's true, and I think for Canada, it's they don't get these opportunities a lot. They're building their profile for now. It's like, okay, no, let's see what this team is. And so for them, it's nothing but learning. It really is nothing but learning. I do wish they had another African matchup just because I want to see, I would love to see them have to, okay, adjust the physicality of Cote d'Ivoire. Because again, I will continue to say that game. The lasting image of that game is Frank Kessie ragdolling someone in front of the Canada bench and running off back to the pitch just laughing.
Like it
And
was
all I
Jaden
thought was like,
Wilson.
and look, and Jaden handled it well, but like I saw
Dribble
that I was just like, oh, that whole okay, that speaks to another point. I think Canada, and we said this after Guatemala, they that is their one weakness I have with them. They are willing to play in the mud. If you don't even have to open the door, just suggest it. They will gladly go in there. And that's the one concern I have. If someone plays a chippy, ugly game with them, they are more than willing to meet you and just and that's the curse of the brotherhood, I call it, right? They always want to have each other's back. They want to stand up for each other, and that's all well and good. But there are some cases where you just have to play, and if the ref is not calling things, the ref's not calling things. I will always say this. I don't need my refs to be perfect. I need them to be consistent. If I can kick someone in the knee in the second minute and I don't get a card, I expect to kick that knee in the 92nd minute and not get a card. But they are just they're in. It's my logic. It's how it's easy to sleep that way, okay? Because if not, then like I'm bunning out referees, and I can't do that every day. But like that's the thing for me. I would love to see them play another side. Morocco would be nice, though I think
Ghana?
Morocco is at another level. Morocco is another level to me because Morocco is a designer team. How do you want to play? Do we want to sit back and defend? Okay. Morocco to me is like they're like a, and this is an insult to say it this way, but they're like the no-name brand of France. France can play designer if they want to, though the shop is just like, what? Defend. And it's like, you have Mbappe. Why? Just run.
You get one more World Cup.
I know. He could have got another one. But like Morocco is a side where, how do you want to play? Do you want to play up and down? Okay, cool. Diaz, Ibrahim Diaz, go have fun. We want to play a solid game. All right, cool. We're gonna lock down Hakimi's locking down the right side. Have fun with that, right? Do you want to play route one football? Okay, cool. Hakimi, send it. Ziyech, send a few just long balls to people. They're the designer side, and I think that'd be fun. You know, it'd be a fun matchup right before the World Cup because they're going to be there. Morocco versus Canada, Montreal. Oh, that would be nice.
I will have to go. I'll have to go.
You are going. You don't worry.
I'll have to. That French colonies. That's it.
Canada versus Morocco and Montreal World Cup prep. Oh, the food alone gets me. But everything else, we'll have to wait. But yeah, Canada having a lot of South American sides and Australia. Still haven't played New Zealand. I'm pretty sure for reasons. Droning around, who would know? But I think that's the one thing that they're missing out on. Senegal is pretty much going to the World Cup. I mean, I know they're not officially there, Musa, but they're there. Like,
there you go.
They feel.
I think they are, but I think, like you were mentioning, the African countries, they've figured out the blueprint to see how prepared they are.
Mm-hmm.
Is, for example, when Senegal, who would have thought in the past year and a half that Senegal would have played against Brazil, against England, and happened to beat them.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they're about to make it to the World Cup, and they're still able to pry players that are dual national, that are capable of making it into the French national team, just like the last one that just switched. He's that plays for France.
Yeah.
He was able to snatch them at this moment. He would have made it, maybe not this World Cup, but he would have been in that crazy rotation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think now the African countries are starting to figure out that they have to play European teams to get themselves prepared for the World Cup.
No, and that's true. I think they could offer a very fascinating flow just because they're playing AFCON before. Like they would have just come off playing tournament football. I think that's something that we don't talk about enough.
They'll be red hot.
They'll be familiar with tournament football, so they'll know how to squeak out a victory. They'll know how to get the results they need and then navigate that. I do think don't sleep on African teams this World Cup because they just did it. They just had their tournament. And I think don't sleep on them because, I mean, look, these are the names right now. At some point, we'll talk about the Ballon d'Or. I don't know when that'll be, but we will. Like Egypt, rounding into a very fun side. Marmouche, Salah, Trezeguet, like that's like what else do you need in that side? I'm just going through the group leaders right now, right? Senegal, they could be fun. DR Congo, I mean, they're the Spurs of Africa. So what are you gonna do? Like every time, just going. Cape Verde is a boom or a bust team because I feel like they'll either surprise everyone or they'll be New Zealand that one year where they don't lose, they don't win, but they leave respectfully. Morocco, we've already talked about it. Designer. Cote d'Ivoire, can't really stop them. Gabon, even there. Algeria weren't bad, but they got the results. so that's good for them. Tunisia is always the one side in Africa where I'm like, they'll be there, and then they'll be gone. I don't have faith in Tunisia. I'm sorry. And then Ghana. I mean,
Ghana being Ghana.
listen. Let me tell you about Ghana. Let me tell you about Ghana. Ghana are either going to shock the world or they'll shock the world. Like it's one of the two. It's either or. It's either they're going to the quarterfinals and the semis, or it's we're getting grouped. There's no middle ground for us. And we still don't have a striker, even though Jordan still plays there. I digress. Have we seen the new stadium in Morocco? We will see it. Between AFCON, the women's U17s, and CAF Champions League prep and stuff. Oh, we're gonna see it. But yeah, I've seen photos of it. It looks nice. That was before they announced the friendlies, the Venezuela friendlies, and the other ones for Canada. I was like, take a flight. Canada should just fly out to Morocco and just play Morocco and like Nigeria, because Nigeria will be prepping for AFCON. So you might as well, because they won't be prepping for, well, at the time, I didn't think they'd be prepping for the World Cup. They might still be, but they might not be.
Morocco, you're talking the whole country.
Yes.
It's not just stadium. Did you see they put an ice ring there?
Yeah.
They built a new ice ring, hockey ring. I'm like, yeah, no, they're going for it.
Mm-hmm. And it's good to see them do it. It's good to see different countries building that infrastructure well, so that you can be, and given the opportunities to be the center of the world for football development youth. I mean, Morocco has all the U17s for the next 5 years. They've had in the last few women's AFCONs. So they're really using that infrastructure well, which is a whole conversation for Canada. Where I'm like, I just want a regional CONCACAF tournament. You know, I want a regional group. I want Canada to play like Belize, someone, because Prince is here.
There.
Like, we're so close. We just have all these perfect sizes. Yep. They did beat Spain at that. They looked the best out of the CONCACAF and African sides that I watched. Though Panama had a night.
Morocco is close enough to Spain. Come on, half of them,
half their team just walked across the street.
Yeah, they're French like Spanish, pretty much. That's how they're built.
I respect it. Rapidly finishing this out. Bound all happened. I haven't had a chance to really talk about this with anyone, so I feel like you guys are going to we're going to have a conversation. Dembele wins for the men. Bonmati wins for the women. I was really hoping Salah won. And
I'm dropping off.
Listen, and I know why. And for me, at least, based off of the year that he had the club year. He didn't have the European year. That's the thing, right? Liverpool goes out early in the Champions League, and he doesn't have it. And so, based off of his, everyone's coming for me here. Yes, I know. I have famous bad takes, such as I like Matisse Tell over Olise. Okay. What? I know that I have that's out there somewhere. I know. I liked Tell at the beginning. I'm allowed to be wrong. I like to be wrong sometimes. I'm not trying to be, but that's just reality. But for you guys, Ballon d'Or, who did you wish would have won it? And are you fine with Dembele taking it this year?
I mean, I think there was only one winner, and I think there was only one person who deserved to win it. It was Ousmane Dembele. He had the club year, he had the year in European football, won domestically what he could have won. I think they won the Coupe de France, they won league title, won the Champions League. He built into a brand new position within the side as well as the number 9. This is a guy who injury plagued for many years. Nobody thought he was going to come back to be what he is now, a position gaping and left by Kylian Mbappe, and comes over and wins that position, molds himself into a number 9, plays terrifically well, wins games for PSG. For me, it had to beat Ousmane Dembele. I don't. For me, if you were talking about a number 2, I think it was so far behind Dembele with how fast he is. You couldn't even see them in a rearview mirror. For me, Dembele was that far ahead of anybody in number 2. And for me, number 2, if we're talking about the award and who should have been number 2, for me, it's Rafinha. I know people want
Yeah.
Salah. They wanted Lamine Yamal. Rafinha was incredible and didn't get the recognition he really deserved this year. How many goal contributions he had in the Champions League for Barcelona got completely overlooked because of a 17-year-old kid who had a decent amount of goal contributions for his age and just was a talent that we haven't seen in years and is one of those players that makes you want to watch football and gets you off your seat. But Rafinha also does that exact same thing and built himself also into a new role to let Lamine Yamal get onto the football pitch. So for me, Salah was number 3, and then Rafinha and then Ousmane Dembele was extremely far ahead to win the Ballon d'Or.
That's true. That's true. Now, for someone who supports the Parisians, apparently, are you cool with Dembele winning this? And I'll throw you this: did Hakimi get enough respect in the voting for you based off of his year as well, or do you think he was well slotted where he was?
Nah, he got disrespected by a long shot. That I think just the right back position, he's not supposed to score that many goals. He's not supposed to be the it factor for his national team. You know, we all know the right back, you're supposed to be able to run through the flanks. You're supposed to be able to cross the ball and make sure no one, nutmeg you or anything. But from that position, trying to be able to be that much of a leader, and he did that for the national team and Paris Saint-Germain because he was able to do it. So I think he got forgotten because of the position and that he does not have like the flair that the guys that we just mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you watch all of the ones that from 5 up, they all have the dribbling skills, they all have the flair, and they're all either midfielders, attacking midfielders, or forwards. So I think it was to somewhat. Salah is my guy as well. I understand what people were saying, but that was just in the EPL.
Yeah.
So EPL cannot outweigh what the others are able to do with their national team and league and European play at the same time.
No, yeah.
Salah also failed domestically too. League Cup, FA Cup.
Yeah, but that's like all domestic. Like
Yeah.
And that's why I think, like, for me, Dembele winning it made sense because domestically, PSG dominated. Europeanly, they dominated as well. Even if you want to throw in the Club World Cup, which, I mean, sure, whether you want to include that or not, they're finalists for that as well. Like, the year they had everything, that's the best resume that they could have had, which is why at the end of the day, when they give it to him, like, okay, cool. I don't have an issue with that. I do not have an issue with that at all.
But I think I think for Dembele, I don't know how often or how long people have followed his. You think the Dembele that we saw this year, it's what we've all seen since he started at Rennes in Ligue 1. We all knew he was capable of. That's why when he went to Dortmund, he was able to do it. I think the Barcelona side where he was all injured all the time, but also I think that's where the part of the teenagers that had too much money too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Barcelona, that's where you hear all the stories where he was late to practice, overslept because he was playing video games too long. So that was that moment that almost ruined his Barcelona days. But if we all know about it, is that if Dembele would not have left to Paris Saint-Germain, Lamine Yamal would not have had his shot with the first team. Because you saw when Dembele left, that's when Lamine Yamal went to the first team. So it's almost like progression. And I think it's also the story of, being injured this entire time and then coming back and still being able to perform at the position where he even said himself, he told many of his coaches before that he wanted to be on the right side, and that was his preferred position for decades. It's just that Enrique actually listened to him this time and gave him the opportunity, and the rest is history. So we've not seen, the right to riches almost story, like where the Ballon d'Or winner was able to kind of go from almost obscurity to winning it. And I think the last thing before, so I stop, especially because it's the French thing, is that if you think about it, if you watch how Benzema did it, he waited he took his skills, pushed it aside to make sure that Ronaldo was getting all of the praises, all of the goals, and everything, for him to come back the year right after and says, now it's my time. And then he goes to win the Ballon d'Or. At PSG, you have Mbappe, you have Messi, you have Neymar. They all leave, and the year after, bam, he wins the World Cup. The Ballon d'Or.
The Ballon d'Or. No, so, it's a fair point. It's a very
two French players back to back. So I think it's one of those stories where it's almost a feel good story to see how he won it. And I guess I'm French, so it meant a lot to have not only an African descent player to win it, and a French one. And then his mom says that they will do a tour of Africa with the Ballon d'Or because it's African's Ballon d'Or. I think you couldn't give that better to anyone else. Yeah, Lamar would have partied for years.
Hey, he'd still be on the yacht. He'd still be on the yacht. Yeah. No, but I think that's a fair point, especially you bring up the Benzema point of just you bide your time, and then when you get the opportunity, you really go. And I think for Dembele, we've all known that talent was there, that potential was there. It was great for him to put it all together. Yep. I would love for him to maintain at least like a similar to that level for like 2 or 3 years, just so that people there's a conversation with him where he's good, right? I always make the comparison for tennis that Neymar is the Andy Murray of football, where right he played in the era with Messi and Ronaldo, the Nadals and the Federers of his day. And he is out here being like, hey, we're going here. We're kind of playing. It didn't work. But like to make an interesting tennis comparison, like he could be like a Leighton Hewitt, the Australian who won Wimbledon a couple times, played well, still is there and still has a long career. But for like 24 months, he was the world's best. And it was just like, oh, okay, we see it now. It all makes sense. I think that would be really fun to see. What are you saying here? Is Enzo wrong then to bring it to Africa? What does Dembele know about heritage?
Do you know dude spent most of his time in Senegal and Mali because that's where his parents from. He is in Senegal every summer. See, those are the people. I don't know where Son is from, but us French guys that are French with Senegalese descent or African descent, for us going to Senegal on vacation from France is like Americans and Canadians going to Mexico on vacation. It's a 2.5-hour flight.
Got you.
But yes, he knows about Africa because trust me, they know.
That they do. That's like what's it called? It's whenever Memphis Depay shows up in Ghana and is like the Dutch player's like, oh no, he's Dutch, but he knows his roots.
Mm-hmm. Hey, he speaks Wolof too. Come on. He does. Shout out to the
2013 Confederations Cup with Neymar. Another thing I wish would come back. Ooh. I think a fun one to end today off would be if you way too early. Actually, no, forget way too early Ballon d'Or predictions because that's just, come on. It'll be Lamar because for some reason they'll just give it to him. The Barcelona PR is strong.
Clearly, it didn't work.
How did Bonmati win for the women when Spain didn't win the women's Euros, and then they also lost in Barcelona, lost in the finals of the Champions League, and Bonmati wins it? It was just like, I see the points here, but not going to get into this here because I'm a Wolves fan. And on my women's team, my club said, our women's side, we're just not going to pay to be professional. We're just going to relegate ourselves. And I think we're going to get relegated on the men's side. So I'm having a great time club football wise this year.
Yeah, my Chelsea side, women's side, just wins trophies in their sleep. So I'm not complaining.
I did see that though. It was a moment for sure. It was a moment. But it was because we're all in CONCACAF. I want to ask this: we've had one African player win the Ballon d'Or, even though there should have been two. Samuel Eto'o should have at least had one, but I digress. What comes closer next? A CONCACAF. Okay, I'll put this more fun. What is more likely to happen? Multiple CONCACAF players making the finalists list for the Ballon d'Or, or an African player winning the Ballon d'Or? Which comes first?
I'd say the CONCACAF and the finalists, because right now where we're at, you got Pulisic, you got Alfonso. If Jonathan has a semi-decent year, it's not that hard to find yourself on the finalist list. Let's like, you got Scott McTominay, who's made the finalists. As good as the years he had for Napoli as a Manchester United fan, he shouldn't be in the finalist list of the Ballon d'Or. This is the best of the best. And we, like you just said, there's such a stronghold on Barcelona players. Lamine Yamal, you got Rafinha, Mo Salah. Salah's still there, but how many years does he has at the top with Liverpool? Realistically, he's been flirting with money to go to Saudi Arabia for a time. It's a possibility he leaves the top flight and goes to Saudi. And Lamine Yamal, like you said already, why are we going to talk about who's going to win it next year? Because it'll probably be Lamine, or it could be Rafinha. Kylian Mbappe for me is probably going to win it next year with how good Real Madrid are looking. So I think it's going to be those three again in the conversation to win it. And with how good Pulisic has looked for AC Milan, if Alphonso Davies comes up and gets full fitness under this Vinny Company side, you could have multiple players from CONCACAF in the finalist list. It's realistically not that hard if both of them hit their true best form and play up to their best. Like you got like right there, like, for example, you got Fabian Ruiz, who had a good year with Napoli, but is he a Ballon d'Or top player? No. You got Scott McTominay. Yes, I might be picking on Napoli players, but this is just not a great time for football when you look at these top 30. But there's some terrific players in there as well, and I just don't think Salah is going to beat out a Kylian Mbappe next year for how highly I think this Real Madrid team is. And outside of Mo Salah, you got Achraf Hakimi, and will this ever be an award that is won by a defender since Fabio Cannavaro? It hasn't been, and I don't think it will come to a defender award. We know how heavily this is an attacking, forward-minded goals, flashy, skillful award. And as much as I think Achraf Hakimi does deserve to be in that top three or could win it, I just don't expect them to ever give this award to a Nuno Mendes or a Achraf Hakimi. So I think it's an uphill battle right now for those players.
Mo, you go, because I think my answer is simple, but I want to hear what you think about this.
I think it's going to be an African player that will win it before that happens. And I think one of them, it's from Dortmund, Sekou. I think the way he's been performing for Dortmund, I think he got the short end of the stick, pretty much where he ended. He was 21st?
21st, yeah.
Yeah, he should have been at least in the top 10 from the performance that he's been scoring goals at will. But I think the way I'm starting to see it is that cities also so European heavy clubs. And if you start to watch a lot of the African players that are making strides now, I wouldn't be surprised if next year or the year after they get a lot closer to winning it, because it's a World Cup year as well.
Mhm.
So you're literally one perfect World Cup away from going from 21st to the top 5.
No, that's true. It is very
But
true. So here's the things
still,
I
we're
think
biased too,
you have to
because
keep in mind. Here's what I think you have to keep in mind. Africa has AFCON this year. And so that's going to weigh, that's going to be the showcase that says, hey, African players, guys, check us out. So I think that is going to help African players. In the same breath, I think a solid World Cup on home soil for the US, Canada, or Mexico is really going to turn up a lot of things.
Yeah.
And all you need is a deep run by Canada, and then it's like, is it Jonathan David? Is it Alphonso Davies? Let me live in a perfect, beautiful world. Is it Ishmael Kone? Is it who is the player who gets like the love and likes that? But I asked it this way: I don't think an African player is going to win this anytime this year specifically. I don't think so. But I do think they have the opportunity to push themselves into the conversation because they'll have 2 recognized tournaments that they can really highlight them. So imagine if Morocco, for example, if Morocco wins it all, then they make, say, the quarterfinals of the World Cup. Give it Hakimi. Hakimi is should be top 2 at that point. No questions asked. But the question becomes, which will come first? I think you're always going to have, whether it's Lamine Yamal, whether it's any of the top players there. So can you get enough CONCACAF players? They have one opportunity. Pulisic, I think, is your biggest name for that to happen. So it would have to be Pulisic and Davies because no one else is really pushing at that high level. Jonathan David would have to have an insane UCL and then follow that up with an insane World Cup. When it gets to Mexico, I mean, Edson Alvarez would have to. I mean, the thing with Mexico is they've done everything outside of that. They've won the Gold Cup. They've won Nations League. It's just, does making it to the quarterfinals for Mexico deem them as a success? Maybe. I don't know if they have enough names in high enough leagues that'll get outside of Liga Mexi that'll really resonate with the European bias voter. So I think it might come down to those big names for that. But I think African players this year have a bigger opportunity to really push forward and get their names higher into the list. Like G. Rossi, the thing that sucks about him is that they're not going to make the World Cup. And I don't think they're in AFCON either. So he just has club and EUCL to really put
Dortmund's
on.
not winning any competition
No.
realistically. So that's what weighs him down for me.
It is. So I think in a backhanded way, I think getting CONCACAF players into the top 30 is much more realistic this year than an African player winning it this year, because I just need to make the list. But
yeah, make the list,
yeah. But if I have to say, don't sleep on that Morocco side, if Hakimi, if they win, even if they make the finals for AFCON and then they walk into this World Cup next year, Hakimi's the name. And then now we're playing the game of, will a defender get love at the Ballon d'Or finally? I know he won't, but that means he's probably finishing second and Lamal is winning, and they won't even give him the trophy. They'll give him a yacht and just go and do what you must do, young kid.
But Lamar Yamil will actually have to carry Spain to the World Cup and play as he currently plays.
Mm-hmm.
I think one thing that he has not been tested. Yes, he beat France on his way to the European Cup, but now we're talking World Cup.
Mhm.
You're talking pride goes over. Now they all know who you are. They don't care that you're the 17, 18, or 19-year-old prodigy.
Mhm.
They're going those tackles will hurt.
Oh, for sure.
So now the question will be, will he be prepared for a World Cup? Because a club, you're protected. European UCL, you're protected, but now it's the World Cup. Are you ready for that stage? Because
Mhm.
if Spain kind of goes down a little bit, or he's not performing like he's supposed to, or Rafinha outplayed him in La Liga, even though everybody was talking about Lamine Yamal. Rafinha he moved to Barcelona and he took over, and all
Yeah.
of his stats are pretty much higher than even some of Dembele's. It's just that they were riding on the 17-year-old kid. Now, as this 18-year-old, how is he going to manage the pressure of World Cup Spain? Because now he has to win it. Because if we'll say France wins it, and then Dembele is still running with all the trophies in France, and they make a good run in the Champions League, why shouldn't we give that to Dembele?
I'm thinking of more ridiculous things to say now, but it's a thought. It's a thought I
I
had
got something.
before the finals of the last World Cup, and I think I'm still going to have it, which is if France wins this World Cup, do we put Mbappe in the R9 conversation?
He has, if he performs like he
If
did,
In the
if he
last World
performed,
Cup.
he has to.
Yeah, I think you have to. I
And
thought
then
if he won, yeah,
he's in
if
the
he, yeah.
pedigree where no one
Hmm.
can touch him because he's
To be
at an
fair,
age where he's still young enough that he probably has another 2 or 3.
Hmm.
He already beat Pele's numbers for goals. And if he beats Clairefontaine's World Cup, just one World Cup goals, he already has the numbers. He already won a World Cup. It took Messi until he was in his late 30s, almost to retire, to win one. I think Mbappe, all he has to do is play well for Real Madrid, make a run
Yeah,
in the Champions League, and if he makes a hell of a good run during the World Cup, then R9 was not able to beat France in '98, and then since then they have not done anything.
I mean,
And
they
then it's
did win
three,
it. They did
then
win
it's
in
three
'02. I mean,
finals.
what I woke up to watch the '02 finals, and it
Yeah,
was lovely. But no, I think that's a fair point. But it's just something because when you mentioned Lamal, it was like, yeah, because I had that conversation with. There's so many interesting takes and interesting legacy points that are going to come with this World Cup. But again, as we try to keep this, guys, we're only going 90 minutes, and the ref's been looking at his watch for the last a little bit, being like, "Do I blow the whistle? Do I not blow the whistle? I don't know." But guys, this has been fun. I'm gonna leave a link for these guys' YouTube pages. Mo Football's covering all things St. Louis football, St. Louis soccer, not St. Louis football. Someone's gonna be like, "Tell me about how we still should have the Rams." It's like, no, high school soccer, please. High school soccer, please. Um, and so St. Louis City FC out there on the rise, all things Canadian men's football. He had his reaction to the Canadian men's roster. So, guys, I'm going to put their links there. I'll try to tag them in the title as well so you guys can go to them. But make sure you leave a like and subscribe on their platforms. Let them know where you came from. We need a catchy name for this because like I got to stirring the pot, but I'm like, the graphic is just so much work. Seasoned FC just seems, just too on the nose, but we'll see uh, how it goes. But guys, thank you for everyone who's here. Thank you everyone who's watched already. We'll try to clip this up and get some great, some of my great takes that will be floating through the internet for the rest of time.
I'll be
oh boy.
safe. Intel.
Listen, I liked Tell coming up. Okay, can you blame me for liking a player? Can you blame me for liking a player?
I'll text you on that one.
Yes. So, guys, thank you for enjoying this. We'll wrap it up right here. And as always, thank you. Have a great night / good morning, depending on when you're watching this. And I'm gonna stop talking right here.